Hi, I'm Qianqian. I'm a Chinese artist, designer, and educator working with code. I previously led P5 for 4 years. I grew up practicing traditional Chinese calligraphy, so I've always thought of text as visual material. In this tutorial, we are going to explore 3 new text and typography features in P5 version 2, loading font with Async Await, animating text weight in variable fonts, and building an interactive type using textToContours. Let's start with how to load font in P5 version 2. In the old P5 version 1, we use a function called preload to load assets. The sketch wouldn't start drawing until everything finishes loading, and you'd see this loading message while you wait. Here I have an example where I load multiple fonts in preload and assign them randomly to each character. Now let's convert this to version 2. You switch version in the top right corner of the editor. When you run the sketch, you will see some error message that preload is no longer supported in version 2. The fix is pretty straightforward. Move the load script into setup and the word async before function setup, and add await before each load. If you have multiple fonts, you can wrap them in await promise all. And just like that, the sketch is working again. So what's async await? Dan has a great video if you want to dive deeper. In short, async await is a more modern and flexible way of loading assets. A simple way to think about that is through cooking. In P5 version 1, with preload, it's like you have to get all your ingredients ready before you even start cooking. In P5 version 2, with Async Await, you can start cooking right away. When you get to a step where you need ingredients like onion, you go get onion while your soup keeps simmering on top of the stove. In version 1, nothing happens until everything is loaded. In version 2, the sketch starts immediately. Await only pauses the parts that needs to be waited. And that means loading becomes something you can control and design. In this example, a blue background shows up right away while the fonts are still loading. That's really the power of Async Await. Loading becomes part of the experience you can control. Now let's talk about variable fonts. In P5 version 2, it's so much easier to work with variable font. Specifically, you can now change text weight dynamically. Here's a sketch based on a demo by Dave, one of the P5 maintainers. The text weight of each row is animated by mapping value from 200 to 800 to a sine wave, which moves back and forth smoothly between -1 and 1. If you want to use a different variable font, Google Font is a great place to start. Filter by variable under technology, find a font you like, click Get Font, then get embed code, and copy the URL that includes the weight range. Bring that URL to your sketch, pass it to load font, and you're good to go. We can take this further though. So far, we've been applying one weight value to an entire row. What if we can apply different weights to each individual characters? Here's an old sketch I made that creates a waving animation by changing text size and adding offset to each row. With version 2, we can add text weight that become part of the system. And it makes this whole animation feels a lot more alive. If you want to get deeper on variable fonts, Nikki and Munas taught an amazing variable font workshop of P5 version 2, and all of the materials are available online for free. Definitely check that out. Now let's get to textToContours, one of the most exciting typography features in version 2. In P5 version 1, if you want to get shape data of a text, you'd use text-to-point. It works, but it has a frustrating limitation. It returns one big flat array of all points across all the shapes in your text. It doesn't separate points by letters or by inner and outer outlines. So when one outline ends, the next point might belong to a completely different letter, and P5 just draw a straight line between them. The outline might look broken and messy. The new feature, textToContours, will fix that. Instead of one flat array, it gives you an array of arrays. Each array is one contour. So now you can work with each contour separately, and drawing clean outline becomes much more easier. Next, I will walk you through this textToContours example code and turn it into something interactive. Right now, the example sketch already has a nice wobbly outline motion. It uses textToContour to turn text into contour arrays. Each array is an array of points, and then it draws those points using vertex with some wobbly effects. Let's organize the code a bit so it's easier to read. I will make a wobble x variable for the movement. So if we just draw vertex point x, point y, it shows a simple shape. And adding wobble x makes a shape move. If we console log contours, we'll get 7 arrays back, which means this text is made up of 7 separate contours. Each array holds the points for one contour. To draw the shape, it wraps everything in begin shape and end shape, and using begin contour and contour to define each individual contour. Like text to points, text to contour also has a sample factor parameter. You can increase it for more points, decrease it for fewer, and watch how this affects the shape. Now, let's make it more interesting. Instead of drawing the contour just once, what if we draw multiple contours? I'm going to wrap the shape code in a for loop that will draw, let's say, 10 layers. At first, all of this outline would sit at the same place. So we need to give each layer some offset. We can create a variable called expand, which grows as the layer number increases. So layer 0 has no offset, and layer 1 shifts a little, layer 2 shifts more, and so on. Right now, I'm just adding the expand value to both x and y, and now every layer shifts that diagonally. This already gives a multiple outline, and they are moving on the same direction. Now let's make it responsive to mouse position. For each point, I will calculate how far it is from the mouse. That's dx and dy. Then I use 8 and 2 with those values to get angle from mouse to that point. Using cosine and sine, I can turn the angle into x and y movement and multiply by expand so the outline moves further. Now, every layer expands outward, and the direction is always away from the cursor. Move the mouse, and the whole shape responds. One more thing, you can swap vertex for spline vertex to get a smoother outline. This was previously called curve vertex in p5 version 1, just so you know. So to recap what's happening here, we start with one set of contours, multiply them with a for loop, and use 8 and 2 to push each point outwards based on the mouse position. From there, you can play with color, timing, and different interactions. I made a version where the shape stays still until the mouse gets closer. The code is linked below, so feel free to remix it and share what you come up with. There's so much more to discover in p5 version 2 when it comes to text. Dave made a really fun interactive tutorial to make vintage 3D text postcards using text-to-model. I'm also a big fan of the generative design book, which has many cool type experiments coded in p5 0.7 back in 2018. With all the new features in version 2, I can't wait to see new iterations of the sketches. And speaking of inspirations, a lot of artists and designers have been making incredible work with text in p5, such as Styles Living Room, made with p5, is currently on view in MoMA in New York. Maya Man's project Fake It Till Make It is another great example of working with text in p5. And Qianqian has been making amazing type projects using p5, like Space Type Generator, all worth checking it out. I hope you find it inspiring. Have fun coding.